Alright, what is up everybody? We are back with another episode of Dave's R&R Rambles and Reviews with your host Dave. I know it's been a little while, life's been a little crazy. I know it's been a minute since an episode's been released, so my goal kind of for the next little bit, I'm going to try to release a couple quick hitters, a couple of quick episodes just to get into the groove, and then hopefully we'll finally get into some more long form episodes since I know that's what we've been lacking as a podcast. But for now, we're going to just try to put out as many quick hitters as we can to get some content out and go from there. So I thought, what better way to come back with You Season 4 Part 2. We did the Part 1 review when that came out last month, and we said at the end of that, hopefully Part 2 picks up and gets a lot better, because Part 1, for a lot of folks, it was really lacking. We gave that a pretty low score relative to what I usually score stuff. So it was disappointing, but I did say it had potential to redeem itself going into Part 2. So Part 2 came out recently, got to finally watch it, and it was kind of a hit or miss season again. A little bit better than Part 1, but it's just not the You that we watched before, and we'll get more into that. But I just want to start off with saying Netflix, producers, directors, anybody out there that's making a TV show, if it's going to be split into two parts like this in a binged format, if you're going to give people the first half to binge, make them wait to binge the second half, you gotta start with some heat right off the bat. Episode 6 was very disappointing to me. I couldn't believe it. We waited a month for Part 2. Everyone had all their theories. Everyone had all their hopes for Part 2. Everyone had their discussion about Part 1. Part 1's ending was pretty solid. It gave us a good format for Part 2, gave us a good ground base. And just Episode 6 was just, it felt like a whole lot of nothing, a whole lot of bore. I couldn't believe that's what they came out with. Episode 6 might have been the worst episode of the season, and that's very disappointing. You have to reel us right back in with a great episode. So we weren't off to a good start with Episode 6. But going from there, we did find out that a popular online fan theory that Joe was imagining this version of Reese, that Reese was a real character, but it was all in Joe's head. Joe was making up the one that was in front of him. The theories were based off how Reese wouldn't interact with anyone else but Joe. It didn't seem like anyone else in the room noticed that he was there. So this theory did get confirmed when Joe had to go kill the real Reese, and it all downward spiral from there. And that was kind of where it picked back up, because we start getting classic Joe Goldberg here. All the fights in his head, all the craziness, all the creepiness. This is where it really picked up. So episodes 7, 8, 9, from that point, we did get a lot of good TV. So I'm glad we did end up going back to our roots. They tried in Part 1, it wasn't as like Joe's obsessed with the girl. And now, they kind of flipped it. He was going to try to save Mary, and he couldn't remember the passcode, and everything started crumbling around him. And that's when this show's at its best, when it's Joe being put back into a corner. The ending of this season, we're just going to kind of skip right into that, because we've all seen it at this point. If you're listening, you probably are well aware of the spoilers. The season ended in a way that kind of has been different. This is kind of Joe at his highest now we've seen. In previous seasons, we have seen Joe win. We have seen him invade the cops. But he's lost something along the way. He either lost, a love interest. He lost something else. He had to move. He had to change his name, like he had to change his name going into this season. He always had to sacrifice something along the way. This time, everything worked out in his favor. And I think this is setting us up for a very evil Joe. Because if you look into the past seasons, he's never kind of gone after anyone on the younger side. At the end of the season, he ended up framing Nadia for everything. This is something I don't think old Joe Goldberg would have done. He really liked Nadia as a student. She was a very brilliant person. And we've seen Joe in the past with other people who have been bright, on the younger side. He hasn't really messed with. He kind of lets them go, either sends them money to keep living their life, all these different things. So I think this is Joe at his peak right now. And the season ends with Joe. He can go full killer now. He's got all the resources behind him. And I think, that's kind of the difference in the ending we saw along the way. The cast was still fairly strong in the second half as well. I did think that I think they really leaned into the Joe and Reese connection because they did have solid chemistry on screen together. But the Joe and Kate, I don't know how that's going to work going forward because it's clearly his least chemistry he's had with a love interest. We've had Beck and we had Love, who both made special appearances this season. And if you actually thought Love was still alive from that little teaser at the end of part one, I'm sorry, but you are crazy. That was kind of the most obvious thing. It was going to be an illusion. I know we all, hoped deep down it was going to be her, but we also knew there was no shot she's alive. Maybe they shock us in the next season with that, but who knows. But just the chemistry between Joe and Kate isn't there. But now Kate is running this insanely billion-trillion-dollar company, just the richest of the rich. Joe is the richest of the rich now, which is kind of funny because he's always been against hating the rich, but he always ends up in this rich circles. So Joe, at his strongest now, is kind of what he hated, and that's having unlimited money, unlimited resources to cover up everything. So we'll see where that chemistry goes in season 5, because let's be honest, the chemistry that he had with Beck and Love on screen in the minute that they were on there was miles and leaps and bounds higher than it's been with Kate. I even think he had more of a connection with Marion. So hopefully going forward they can build some more chemistry on screen, or that's going to leave for a pretty lack in season 5 now that the Reese in his head is quote unquote dead, along with the real Reese there. So that kind of leads into the next part of it. We did have a solid season. The cast still saw it before. It did build. I give this second half a 7 out of 10, a little higher than our previous part. But part 2, it got some craziness. Maybe even a 7.25. I might go there with it. But it just isn't the old you anymore. The chemistry with Joe and Kate really lacked in the second part. And while we got the craziness of Joe that built it back up, it's never going to be used season 1, 2, and even a little of 3. So season 4 was kind of disappointing. So where do we go from here? We kind of already discussed, Joe has all the money in the world. He's with Kate, who is as powerful as it gets. Season 5, which I know maybe it hasn't even been confirmed yet. I don't think it has, but everyone knows it's going to happen. I think season 5 has to be the last season of You. It can't keep going on any longer. I think this season the burnouts start to show a little bit. Eventually with these different love interests, the chemistry wasn't going to always be there for all of them. The chemistry that he had with Beck was solid. The chemistry that he had with Love on screen was phenomenal. So I think we're at a point with it. The chemistry with Kate's lacking. Joe's at his highest of highest. It's time to see the downfall. It's time to see all the pieces fall apart. Time to see Joe either go to jail, end up in a box, which I think that's going to be a very strong theory of how the show ends. Joe ended up in one of his own creation boxes, which I kind of think that would be a full circle and very solid ending of the show. Or Joe may die. There's plenty of ways that they can go to end. Like I said, I like the one where he's in his own cage. I think it would have that good, ironic ending to it. But it can't keep going on. The show has, as great as it was, it's overstayed its welcome at this point. The part 1 and beginning of part 2 were just so weak compared to every other thing we've seen. Part 5, they just need to really season 5, they just need to put their heads together and give us a very strong conclusion of the show, because it is one of the better shows Netflix has put out. It's been one of the more popular ones. It has been very, very enjoyable along the way. But I just don't see, we can't end up in season 7, season 8, wondering what are we doing here. It's already going downhill, so let's finish strong. Season 5, give us some more flashbacks, give us Joe at the top for a little while, give us a cliffhanger if you're going to do part 1 and part 2 and make that part 2 start strong, but give us a good ending. Please mark season 5 as the final season. I think that's the way we go from here. And that's going to do it for this episode of Dave's R&R. There's a little bit of a review / ramble on You part 2 and where we go with season 5 going forward. I hope you did enjoy. For more, follow online, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter at Dave's R&R. Thank you for listening. Thank you for the support. And let's get back strong here. And just thank you again for listening. Take it easy.